After 5 years of battle against a terminal cancer, Hiraku's last flame of life went out and her soul entered the heavenly kingdom. Having lived 39 years full of betrayal and suffering, the god of the world apologized for accidentally giving him such a horrible life. To make up for his mistake, God will give him a second life with a healthy body and grant him any wish. The only thing Hiraku ever wanted was to be reborn as a farmer in an isolated area. To help him on his journey, God gave the most powerful tool in this universe, the all-powerful agricultural tool. With a single touch, his flame burns intensely again, and Hiraku wakes up in the middle of a forest. As he moves his body for the first time in years, he realizes that this is all he's ever wanted, and with the all-powerful agricultural tool he begins to use his new body to restore the soil. As he cultivated the field, he realizes that he never feels tired using the tool. He needed a good place for his farm. So he searched the entire forest until he found a giant tree to call home. There were no rivers or lakes in any part of the forest. To satiate his thirst, Hiraku decided to dig a well to get water. His all-powerful agricultural tool became allowing him to dig deep into the ground until a well of water was formed. With the source of guaranteed water, he began to clean the ground. A tree that prevented him from cultivating. With the knowledge of his previous life, he tried to cut it strategically, but with the single blow of his all-powerful axe, the tree fell instantly and he ran before it crushed him. Now that he had his first horse trunk, he turned into 4 horse stables with his hammer. After converting all the trunks into stables, with his workbench, the sun began to set, and he panicked to try to get fire. But without firewood, he spent the whole night digging a hole in the giant tree. He thought of building a dirt hut, but he remembered that Newton invented gravity this world, so he didn't want to bury himself alive. The next morning, he gathered firewood and lit his first fire to avoid the same mistake. It's been more than a day since he's been cleaning all the trees in the distance. Didn't get tired or feel hungry even once. That was the power of his powerful tool. And as soon as he was about to continue cleaning, a monster rabbit ran in his direction. With his powerful staff, he finished it instantly. While eating the sticks, he feels guilty for finishing the rabbit. He would like to have a snack to eat the food. Sorry, he wanted a snack to make food. After eating, the food needed to come out somehow. So Hiraku created an innovative bathroom and a shelter for privacy. With everything finally resolved, he began to cultivate the rest of the day thinking about which vegetables he should plant first. When he finished, it was already late, so he decided to look for seeds. But in the next day, the land already had plants sprouting. It didn't make sense how the plants could grow out of nowhere, and Hiraku thought it was a side effect of his cultivation tool. Regardless of how they came about, he started creating a fence to protect them from the zombies at night, and dug a hill to keep all the creepers away. The process took a few days, but after finally finishing the perimeter, Hiraku noticed that the plants were growing at an incredible speed. With all the extra wood, he decided to create a small bullfighting hut and used his carpentry skills to make a good roof, increasing his level of civilization. After a few more days expanding the farm, Hiraku saw a couple of very injured wolves and tried to bring them the remaining meat of the giant boar that he defeated. Hiraku fed them, but noticed that one of them was pregnant. As a child, his only wish was to have a dog, so he wanted him to do it with him, but the female began to go into labor. To protect them, he took them to the hut and lit a fire to warm them up at sunset. After a long night without sleep, Hiraku saw 4 puppies feeding. To celebrate the healthy birth, he gave them the tastiest meat he had collected. A while passed and the dogs stayed there inside his hut. Hiraku decided to build a new house right next to them. When the puppies started running, their plants were ready to harvest, and he noticed that the tomatoes were the first to finally bear some to his dogs and named the male Kuro and the female Yuki. After a few weeks, Hiraku discovered the secrets of his omnipotent agricultural tool. When thinking about potatoes, the tool planted seeds by magic. This trick to create all the foods he ever wanted. And besides, everything he cultivated with his grew much faster than normal. Grateful to the gods for giving him such a powerful item, Hiraku created 2 statues to honor them. He realized that his diet was getting too repetitive, so he decided to start planting some trees. They can take years to start bearing fruit, but the wait will be worth it. As the weeks passed, the wolves began to grow horns, and they found a waterfall 30 minutes away. although creating a channel made obtaining fresh water much easier. The distance he would have to dig was too long, so he decided to focus on his base for now. The farm was growing constantly, and he began to add a variety of plants, such as wheat and sugarcane, to support himself. As months of progress passed, Hiraku began to lose track of the days, and winter was approaching. There was no chance for him to continue cultivating in this state. The skin of the giant rabbit smelled bad as they began to rot. For the winter, he gathered food and firewood. But one day, Kuru took a giant spider. With the silk of the tail, she produced a canvas with detailed embroidery. He became a new citizen in his small farm, produced all the testes in exchange for some potatoes. If he needed a coat for winter, a bed full of leaves or curtains to block the cold wind. The spider's abutan produced everything he needed. His small hut was beginning to become more civilized, and winter finally arrived. With the firewood he built, he managed to survive the rigorous cold nights. Even so, despite surviving, he felt terribly alone, fearing to forget how to talk to someone. When the long winter passed and spring finally arrived, the wolves grew up and decided to leave the nest. But a few days later, they returned with partners. One of them even spanked a lackey wolf and conquered the girl like a giga chat. But they were not the only ones with surprises, because the spider returned with her own children. All the families grew up, so Hiraku began to cultivate to feed them. But while she was cultivating, the spider sounded the alarm, ran to the fountain with Hiraku, and in the middle of the forest they found a girl with silver hair crying. All the animals were apprehensive and she tried to ask for help. So Hiraku approached her, but when he tried to protect her, he fell into her trap, him to bite his neck, turning into a vampire full of plans. The wolves attacked her immediately and destroyed, making her return to her small form. He wondered if she was an enemy, but the girl said she needed to suck his blood to recover energy before dying. Feeling bad for her dogs having spanked her, he offered her a neck to bite, and she started sucking his blood. She turned back into a bigger version of herself. But Hiraku remembered her being taller and having more plot. So he told her to hurry up and suck more blood so he could see his giant plot again. After sucking all his body fluid, Hiraku showed him his farm. It was the first time she had seen those abnormal fruits, and when she took a bite, she found them delicious. He was happy that someone was enjoying his food, because for the first time he had met a person with whom he could enjoy his time in this lonely world. Back home, he realized that the day was full of surprises, and wonders if something like this would happen again. Her name was Lulu Lucy, and she asked if she could visit him in the future. But he had a different request and asked if she would stay with him there forever. He doesn't want it to be just a one-night adventure. Because she touched him in a different way, and Lulu thinks he's trying to ask her to marry him. He doesn't want to miss this chance, and he doesn't care if she's a vampire. He doesn't know how many more years he can stand being alone. She says she's so repentant because she didn't expect a marriage request. But Hiraku realizes that she misunderstood what he meant. After realizing that he was actually proposing, he decided to double-check, begging her to marry him. Lulu smiles at him, saying she wants to stay with him forever. He drags her to bed for another night. The next day, he used the long end of his hoe to grow babies with his new hoe. They sit side by side and watch the trees grow. But the spider starts to ring the alarm again. Hiraku runs and asks herself why she's feeling a deja vu. She frees Angel Girl and thinks this story is about to get very interesting. With all the development of the plot, Lulu tries to run away quietly, but Angel Girl finally found her and is ready to take her away. Then the dogs devour her. She's surprised that Lulu hid in the forest, and is angry for having enjoyed it after the dogs licked her. Lulu is also angry for having enjoyed it when the dogs licked her. Hiraku wonders why getting hurt would make her enjoy it. Angel Girl asks herself who this man is. Introduces him as her husband, while her face turns redder than a tomato. Giant Plot Cannons introduces herself, and she came to meet Lulu because there's a reward for her head. She was constantly searching for different potions, and exploded the kingdom whenever something didn't turn out the way she wanted. She reveals that this was the reason she was in the middle of the forest leaned over the table, asking her aunt if she would like to live there. She promises to show her all the plantations, like Hiraku's eggplant, next to her round nipples. Lulu takes her to the farm, and Hiraku tries to teach her how to cut cabbage. After cutting it, he prepared it as a meal, sprinkled salt on it before giving it to her. She found it delicious, and after a long day of work, they cleaned themselves using their magical skills. At his house, she tasted strawberries for the first time and told him that they would teach her how to make a strawberry pie with cream next. She held her by the arms, begging to live with them, because her body can't handle everything by itself. This was the beginning of their life together. Aunt thinks she liked the strawberry pie, so she asks for more strawberries. But Hiraku thinks that expanding even more now would result in spoiled food. While they were still walking, Hiraku noticed the new chickens and decided to build a stable for them in the open field next to the farm. After he finished, he noticed that all the children of Sabuton were throwing their seeds to fly away. At the same time, Aunt told him to go away for a while and began to fly with his wings. A few days later, Aunt returned and brought more girls to the harem. They are higher elves with giant plots, and they all introduce themselves. They are all relatives, so incest will prevail. Hiraku wonders why there are no men elves, but Aunt reveals the sad reality they had to endure. In the last Great War, the entire male population was annihilated. Then, they roam the forest. Their only desire is to repopulate and beg Hiraku for help. With the increase in the village population, Hiraku began to build them a house for everyone to live together. Their skills in construction and carpentry allowed them to build the house in just 10 days, and they found it much better than Hiraku's dirt shack. However, he wishes that at least in this spacious house they feel safe and at peace. Over time, the elf leader, grateful for having offers mining and forging, and they build an oven on the ground. After processing the iron, Hiraku sees the metal pots created. They say they can do anything after 200 years in nature. Even so, their only wish is to establish themselves and reproduce. Hiraku's plan. Hiraku thought it best to avoid developing plots with all the elves, and remained a typical anime protagonist. While cultivating one day, the elves noticed that he had a giant wheat field. One of them asked if she could make bread, saying that it had the rarest yeast on earth. Hiraku was excited, so the girls baked bread and made grissinis for him to taste. At the same time, everyone wonders if Hiraku's plan is so long and tasty. Now that he can make bread, he wants to expand the wheat fields, but realizes that the expansion is out of control. He asks Lode who the land is, and she says that although no one owns it, it is probably under the control of the Demon Lord. However, for having created this land without support, it belongs to Hiraku. The girls get together and wonder how Hiraku managed to tame the infernal wolves and the demon spider. Even these harvests should not grow on this soil, and they begin to wonder why he has no knowledge of their world. At the same time, Hiraku realized that he hadn't built the channel, so he decides to make it the mission. In the morning, tomorrow, Hiraku sees Saberton pointing to a queen bee, and Hiraku decides to build a house of bees for them to breed honey for him. He spends the whole afternoon preparing a reservoir. They began to mass-produce the concrete channel. The girls' elves bent over to ensure that they were all placed in the right place, while they focused on doing the difficult things. Hiraku filled all his holes with his strong hammer. Due to his efficiency, the channel was completed a single day, and the reservoir was already full. This should allow them to irrigate the plantations much easier. But Hiraku noticed that the reservoir also brought him fish without making any effort. He thought that although the rabbits were dangerous in the forest, the fish were peaceful, but a giant fish almost devoured him in that instant. The girls saw him cooking the fish. Knowing that it was from the forest of death, they doubted whether it was safe to eat. Hiraku finished preparing it, but they said they wanted a different meat dinner. Hiraku had no idea what kind of meat they were talking about, so he started eating and found it delicious. Both girls tried it and found it delicious, and the rest of the elves wanted some of his meat. To satisfy everyone, Hiraku began to capture more fish and preserve them with salt. Wanting to expand his diet, Hiraku tried to look at the earth, thinking about although rice he had managed to grow, the texture of the rice was strange. Since he had a complete irrigation system, decided to build a rice paddy with the elves. After preparing the soil for hours, Hiraku opened all the girls' containers. Sorry, I meant that he opened the container and asked the elves for help. All the girls started to get wet and Leah didn't like the viscous liquid. They all leaned over and planted all the rice plants. A few days later, all the plants were ready for harvest and Hiraku put them to dry. Leah was impressed by him knowing all this. But Hiraku is grateful for always having an agricultural idol before dying of cancer. Dried, Hiraku used his tool to create a sieve and showed how to harvest the rice. The girls saw the work of preparing the rice and wondered if it was finally finished. But Hiraku revealed that there was one more step. He prepared to cook the rice and asked Liu to use his magic to light the fire. So she prepared to release her maximum explosion and reduce everything to ashes. He told her to calm down, disappointing her. With a small flame, Hiraku cooked the rice until it was ready and turned it into balls for the girls to taste. Liu decided to take a bite. The girls found it disgusting and regretted doing all that work all this time. But Hiraku knew they were lying when all the rice was over. He decided to expand the rice plantation. The girls started cleaning after they finished. How the hell does this happen? Hiraku sees how they can all clean themselves with magic and wants to have a bath to wash. As he finally built a canal, he decided to take a bath and showed the girls the plans of how he would design the groove. The girls wondered why they would do all this if they could swim in the river, but Hiraku reminded them that they would freeze in the winter. In addition, he really wanted a bath for health to look at them without any protection from the girls began to build a furnace to heat water and created the biggest bathroom possible. Everything was going well, but Hiraku wondered what they would do with all the dirty water. Tear thinks slimes could purify the water, but Hiraku wondered if they were the dangerous monsters that destroyed adventurers. Tear has no idea what he's talking about, so she flew and brought him some slime. He put some of them in the water purification area and inside the bathroom. Their dirty water problem was solved. So he took firewood to burn, but one of them had mushrooms growing. He always doubted mushrooms for being poisonous. But the girls thought it was safe and wanted to eat them. So Hiraku started preparing some logs for the mushroom growth. At dusk, Hiraku finally completed the bath and tried to explain to the girls. They wanted a practical experience. He took off his plot protection and began to show how to do it, but the girls began to feel a different type of liquid dripping. So they all took off their plot armor and decided to join him. Lu said it was okay for everyone to do it together. Hiraku felt the bone of his sword get sharp and hard. The next morning, Hiraku saw all the edible mushrooms that grew, but the dogs brought more elves. Of course, they were females, but who is complaining? Laya reveals that they lived together, and he is happy to have them all joining him. Sia suggests that they work on the expansion so that everyone can have more space, and encourages them to start having children. Hiraku didn't know why they were so optimistic. What a waste. Kuro realized that the harem of his master has expanded and tells us having a master, he never had a name to be called. Since he was born, he wandered alone and never lost a fight against another male. His only desire was to continue living freely. But when he met that female, she destroyed him. After their complete defeat, they began to travel, but one day her belly began to grow. He wanted to do everything to continue protecting her, and a giant bear was about to annihilate them. However, after being seriously injured, the bear moved away. Still, they couldn't hunt anymore and accidentally reached the most dangerous place in the forest, its center. They saw a human walking carefree, but Kuro noticed the tool in his hand and felt the unlimited power emanating from it. They had already accepted the end of their lives, but he began to take care of them. Kuro noticed that the food was made from a giant ball, impressing him for having managed to defeat such a strong monster. After their children were born, they decided that Hiraku would be their master. Advantage of all the food he prepared. In a short time, their children grew up in a large family. And noticed how Hiraku's harem was also growing, but he still had one concern. His master did not discover that they are the legendary infernal wolves. Kuro thinks there is no problem. He is grateful for his life having led him to such a good life with him. The new and large house was ready, and Hiraku remembered all the excavation that were necessary to prepare it. Although he knew it would be so big, he never imagined how beautiful it would be inside. They showed him the nice room they created, and in front of his main room was the large dining room. In the back was the kitchen, and on the sides there were even more stoves for large meals. Finally, the basement was wide enough to store food and firewood for the winter. On the second floor, the girls saw their rooms and were happy to have their own space. But Hiraku noticed a room with a giant bolt. And Hiraku was surprised. She saw the giant bolt and thought it was a trap. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. She thought it was a trap, but it was not. The next morning, Hiraku thinks that there is something missing after all this time with their meals. Grape juice PG. He gathered all the elves to harvest the grapes, and to squeeze the juices he built a device for them to step on the grapes. Tear and Leia begin to sink their feet in the grapes and crush them until the sticky liquid comes out. They fall on top of each other and see they were covered with creamy and sticky liquid. Wondering how to keep the rhythm while doing this, one of the elves suggested singing a song like in the old days. The juices start to come out, and Tear asks Lu to join them, along with Hiraku. They spend the whole day squeezing the grapes and yeast in the barrels so they could start fermenting. He wonders if they did enough, and the god of the well shows the other god how much Hiraku is having fun and asks for forgiveness. However, the god of agriculture tells him that he managed to end the life human and send him to the deepest parts of the forest. Not only that, he also gave him the dirt of the sacred spear and tried to disguise it as an agricultural tool. Normally, he would suck the vital force of a person and kill them right away. He gave him such a healthy body that he will regenerate his vital energy immediately. She wonders why her statue is an old man. So, as a punishment, she will force her father to sit like this for 300 years. One day, the alarm rang, and Hiraku felt a deja vu once again. Lu recognized the girl, his sister Flora. Knowing that his sister was by the ugly and repugnant black-hearted angel, she followed her here. Asks her to repeat again. Hiraku invites her to stay here, but believe that this ugly bastard is her sister's husband. Kuro warns her to be respectful, and she says he is the master of all these infernal wolves and even knocked down a viper. Hiraku never heard that they were infernal wolves and wonders what inferno means. Kuro shows his skills, warning that he is the best pet. As an apology for the wolves devouring her like the other girls, Hiraku prepared a meaty dinner, but she loves the soft, white and liquid. He says it's just tofu with fermented soy sauce, but she doesn't understand any of those words. It became clear to Hiraku that they don't know about the existence of microorganisms that cause fermentation in this world. So Flora researches and thinks that this would solve many problems. After a few days, Flora decided to leave, returning a month later. She brought an entire army of maids, and they tell Hiraku to use them as a good understanding. Tear realizes that she is the only one who didn't bring many of hers. To stay competitive, she left and returned that night with 3 angels and an entire fleet of lizard men. With the new citizens, she brought chickens. Hiraku is happy to see the more civilized place. The maids belong to a race of ogres and help in all tasks. However, he noticed that none of them know how to cook, so he began to teach them to prepare many different types of meals. Seeing the good food, the maids tried the meat for the best meals. On the other hand, Tear's 3 angels patrolled the forest for safety, and the lizard men took care of the heavy work to speed up the construction. Their leader wore a scarf so that the villagers could distinguish, and Hiraku noticed that the place grows exponentially. Speaking of the devil, Haya comes in and tells him that the rest of the elves who were wandering through the forest. The Damhorn asks where all the men are, but she tells conveniently everyone died in the forest. But it's okay, because they can start making more men now. A few days later, Hiraku asked all the representatives to meet and apologized for calling them suddenly. As the place has grown and more people are moving, becoming a village, so he wanted help to think of a name. One of the maids suggests naming it in honor of the forest, but with the name Forest of Death, Hiraku thinks it would sound like a ghost town. Zabuton pointed to the door and Hiraku opened, seeing the giant tree in the center. It was then that he gave the name of Village of the Great Tree to this village. That night, all the citizens celebrated the village, had a party and opened the first barrel. All the girls shouted the word mayor, and Lu told him that he was the only one in charge. That night was the beginning of their new life as citizens of the Village Tree, and everyone enjoyed it, drinking the juice of the was drunk and asked him to sit next to her. She asked why she was alone, but he said he was so happy that it looked like a dream. But it's not a dream, Tear said. We'll live together like this their whole lives. She tells him to make a toast to their new village, and Lu wants a toast too. Hiraku wonders how many years he has found happiness and thinks he will toast to it. When the summer arrived, the number of residents had increased once again. Finally, a representative of the demonic realm appeared, presenting himself as Bizio, and offered Hiraku a bottle with a message from the Lord Demon. He wanted to discuss the status of the settlement, so Hiraku asked if he wanted taxes or expel him. He wondered if he should ask Lu or Tear for advice, but Lu whispered to him to solve it himself. Hiraku grew courage and informed the messenger that would pay the taxes well, saying he would pay only 10%. Hearing these words shocked Bizio, and Hiraku had ruined everything, but Bizio accepted his conditions. When writing their agreement on a piece of paper, the magnate insisted on paying taxes only on the harvest, but even so, he feared being aggressive in negotiations, so he sent Bizio home with a gift. He wonders if he dealt well with everything, and Lu thinks he did an incredible job. Because now they will have protection under the army of the Lord Demon. Terra agrees, but thinks that 10% is too little. Since settlements usually pay 50 to 60% in tax, since they only come once a year to collect, they can lie about how much they produce. Just created a miraculous agreement. Inside the Lord Demon's castle, the generals at the village of the Great Tree surrendered so easily, but suspect that they may have a hidden reason. Bizio recognizes this possibility, but he had no choice. The Annihilation Angel, along with the Vampire Princess, were right next to the mayor. But that's not all. There was an army of high elves and a pack of infernal wolves, and even a trio of murderous angels patrolling the village. Trembles in fear, knowing that he could never refuse his harsh negotiations. He investigates their gift and sees the apples inside. So one of them tries to check if they are poison, but Bizio notices another strangeness in their gift. The fabric is made of a great demonic spider, a so monster powerful that it paralyzed the previous Lord Demons. Hanjin decides to arrive and gives up. The next morning, the ruler of all dragons, Drame, introduces himself to Hiraku and comes with his count to give them a gift. Hiraku sees the sword facing in there, but thinks it looks kind of violent. He thanks the man and asks what brought them here today. The man explains that Drame's hideout is directly south of their village, so they consider them neighbors, and came here to offer a formal greeting. Hiraku wants to invite them to dinner, so Dream turns into his human form and introduces himself. That night he takes advantage of the PG grape juice they created, but his assistant tells him to leave before they become a nuisance to Hiraku's village. After they left with the gifts Hiraku prepared, he realized that they would have many visitors. So the next day Hiraku began to build a guest house for potential visitors. In addition, he did not want the angels to scare visitors, and whenever Zabuton warned them of a visitor, all the lizard men were ready for the battle. It was far from being a suitable reception, so created a new signal for visitors using a bell and formed a welcome team with Tyr and Lu. The head of the servants would not accept this. His life was in danger if the visitors were malicious, so they added several high elves and lizard men to protect him. And for the visitors who stayed overnight, Hiraku asked Flora to watch them. Since she could spend several nights without sleeping. As soon as all the preparations were ready, a new group of visitors had arrived from the village of Ivante. They wanted to establish commercial relations, decided to take care of it and receive them in his village. If that was the whole group, and their leader stated that they were all. After hearing this, Lu told him that he would treat the others as enemies, and the men who were late in the forest began to scream. The leader apologized for some being late and told him that it is dangerous to have people separated, so they should behave while they were here. After the guests spent the day in the guest house, Lu locked their door at night, and Hiraku wondered why they were treated as prisoners. Tyr asks if he hasn't noticed yet. Every visitor always brought some kind of gift when they came, so that, along with their troops in the forest, is the reason to decrease their hospitality. The next morning, Hiraku wonders why they are not serving him grape juice, but the governess tells him that this is the difference in treatment for the guests who brought the swords and those who didn't. He wanted them to give them more food, but the maid throws a cold look at him. While eating, Tyr and Lu tell him to put aside his sympathy, because these people claim to have come here for negotiations but have not yet discussed anything. Even so, everyone was against offering them wine, but Hiraku forced them to put wine on the table. When trying to start a conversation, Hiraku discovered they came from a village that lived from hunting or mining, so, of course, they needed to negotiate with their neighbors. Despite the recent conflict that prevented them from negotiating, came to the village of the Big Tree to start commercial negotiations. One of them is glad to have left the hideout, as they would not have enjoyed this meal. And Tyr, cunning, asks why they were hiding. The man says that if something bad happened, someone would need to return and warn the village. After seeing how she skillfully extracted information from Hiraku wanted to extract milk from his land. The leader began to negotiate their commercial agreement. As none of them had currency, they want to be able to exchange physical goods. As their village is a good distance away, village of the Big Tree is in one of the most dangerous places. They ask Hiraku if they would come to the village. With such a long distance to cover, Hiraku considers asking Hiro and the other wolves to bring the goods in a carriage, so he agrees and asks what they brought to exchange today. The man shows him the silverware and the glass articles they produce, and Hiraku thinks that their goods would greatly increase their quality of life. In return, they want to negotiate for food, so Hiraku agrees. This was the beginning of their commercial relationship. And before they were about to leave, the leader apologized for not bringing a gift on the visit. Their village has never had such a custom, so he promises to bring something next time, but it may not be luxurious since their village is poor. However, Hiraku tells him that size doesn't matter, what matters is the heart. Who would say that the quantum physics teacher had a little persuasion in his second life? In a short time, The first day of business arrived with the living girls told Hiraku to stay, since Tear would be their representative. Dream agreed to take everyone there in exchange for a barrel of grape juice. Dream came regularly for the grape juice and always brought treasures. So Hiraku was happy to see him, thanked him for the juice and left. A few days later, Tear returned and told that Hiraku they managed to exchange everything. At first, the citizens hesitated because they had never seen that food. So she decided to offer them free samples, and in a short time, everyone loved it. They even sold the wine that was for Dream, so Hiraku promised to give him even more grape juice that night. Tear revealed that the mayor asked if villagers could live in the Big Tree Village. In total, there are 20 residents and they are all girls. How Hiraku realizes that the village will have no future because Reese is an incel who will not develop. He reluctantly agrees, but with the condition that they get at least 2 young people. The following week, the girls show up and say they are mentally ready to be used, as Hiraku understands. Well, as long as he doesn't abandon them. Roku tells her that he is from Alabama, so she doesn't need to worry about anything, and tells her that he will take care of them. He asks if they brought the young and sees the 3 young. It was not what he expected, but time to save this village in the future. After a while living with the new residents, Hiraku realizes that everyone can use magic, even the little slimes. He tries not to worry about the impossible and focuses on agriculture, but an earthquake shakes the ground, and an angel comes to inform him that Bloody Viper and a fighting bear are fighting. She warns him that it may start to affect the village, but while taking him to the battlefield, he imagined their tastes. He sees their giant size and asks her to take him to them as soon as possible. She drives him forward, and with a single blow, he eliminates both. All the murderous angels are surprised that eliminated these legendary beasts with a single blow. He cooks the meat with PG grape juice. The girls are devastated by the waste of the juice. As for the viper, he fried it and thought it tasted like fried chicken. He realizes that something is missing, and that night he went to ask Flora about her fermentation studies. She told him that she did not progress and rebuilt the hut 3 times. Hiraku has no idea how this is possible, promises to keep the explosives at a minimum. The chickens finally laid eggs, so he starts beating them, adds salt and vinegar, and with a little oil, he makes mayonnaise. At that moment, a group of dwarves appeared, led by a man named Donovan. They learn about PG grape juice and apologize for not having money, but they have the technology to create the best Russian drinks. Using distillation, he gives Hiraku a new form of smoothie, thinks it is stronger than the force with which his father beat him. The group of Donovan stayed in the village to create more PG smoothies, threw a party to welcome the feral women and the dwarves who joined the village. Dryman is drinking again, and Lug is happy that he is alone to enrich the village. His assistant ties him up and drags him, and the dwarf thanks him for welcoming them. While Hiraku was drinking, he realized that there was finally a man by his side and tried to ask if any of those girls attracted him. The dwarf man thought they were all beautiful, but he preferred women with full beards. Hiraku realizes that these women may having to see his little persuasion. After all, the next morning, a dragon flies straight to the village, and Hiraku to kill him before it causes problems, but Drynan appears to knock him down. A third dragon appears with a threatening aura, so Hiraku throws his spear to save Drynan. In the last second, the dragon barely dodges, but Drynan's assistant warns him that they are not enemies, surprising Hiraku. He introduces the 2 new women. They are Drynan's daughter, Lastismilkers and Gruffaloon, and I want to play with these balloons like a baboon. Hiraku asks him why his wife and daughter were here, and Drynan tries to explain the situation. He has been constantly leaving the house at night, so his nanny was afraid he was arranging diamond brooches. Drynan tries to explain that it's all high politics. His nanny believes that their suspicions are confirmed. Drynan pleads not to draw hasty conclusions. After all, persuasion, he also has never have the courage to have a case like this. Hiraku apologizes for making the situation worse. Drynan says it's not his fault and tells them to apologize. Last, Moon apologizes for almost burning this village, and Mama Milkers almost burning him alive after he pointed the spear to her daughter. Hiraku is happy that everything worked out in the end, and after he left, asked his wife if she understands what he's been doing all this time. Despite being few, Hiraku's spear alone can take down their entire kingdom. Mama Milkers would not have deviated from the spear if it weren't for Saturn, an old friend. She tells Last that she will give him a very important job. She will live in this village for a while. They cannot ignore this type of power, so she hopes that at least it ensures that his power is never used against them. Asks if she's sure, but Mama Milkers thinks it's best for Last. Hiraku is grateful to her in the village, but quickly realizes she is too powerful, and even her spears destroy all her progress. He wonders what dragons can be useful, so Tile remembers that very wise and knowledgeable usually, so Hiraku thinks she would be good. The next time Bizu visited them, he saw Last and recognized her instantly. She was the infamous crazy dragon of destruction. She asked what brought him oranges today, but she said they were out of stock, so she tried to interest him in some strawberries. Looking at her horns, and said he would take 10 boxes of what she said. She prepares the order and asks if he wants her to tell them, but the only thing is the minutes until he disappears. Like the father when he went to get the demonic castle, the rest of the generals are shocked that Last, the all-powerful dragon, is now among them. They consider spying on them, but realize that they will do badly. Without options, Bizu plans to use his secret plan. Florin's daughter enters the room. He tells her to live among them and investigate her military strength. She tells him that she will certainly be successful, and teleports to their village. At the entrance, Last introduces herself. But Florin already knows how powerful she is. As she walked around the village, Florin noticed that there were many different species. Lizard men, ogres, beast men, and inside even dwarves. Their headquarters, she realizes that the vampire princess is living, and the annihilation angel is leading the execution angel. They even have high elves, those who kidnap men and hunt with them around. There is almost no chance for their army to win. However, after seeing the infernal wolves and the demonic spiders together, all confidence left her body. Using a map she developed, the mare is the only one and must be more powerful than everyone else. She wonders how powerful this man can be, but sees her by and wonders why someone so weak lies there. He asks if she is lost, but she says she doesn't need a weak human worrying about her. Back in the village, Last tells him that she just met the mare. He may be a human, but he can defeat her mother. Florin is shocked because she was extremely rude. As the days went by, living among them, Hiraku noticed that she was lost, but wondered why she was so strange around him. One day, the slimes began to multiply and, eventually, one of them began to devour all their grape juice. The girls were ready to execute the slime. In the trial, they considered him guilty. Hiraku, with pity, released him, and he began to appear at the banquets. After all, a cute slime shouldn't be a problem. Autumn arrived, and while Hiraku was enjoying he wanted to be able to eat some seafood with his meal. Tells him that if he wants access to the ocean, he has 100 girls ready to open their gates and offer his pussy with fish smell. Sorry, I meant that if he wanted access to the ocean, to the port south of the village to exchange for sea products. Last offers to fly there, and the other girls accompany her. They leave, and Hiraku was happy to see who liked his food so much. 3 days later, a merchant from the ocean city returned with Last and showed them all the fish he had to offer. In addition to the fish, he came here to fulfill 3 main objectives. The first was to properly greet the mayor of this village, the second was to start commercial, and the third was to become the official commercial ambassador of this village. With his years of experience, he can help the village Grand Arvour to multiply its profits several times. Then the girls decide to analyze his proposal. After a long day of negotiation, the merchant was ready to leave and was excited to discuss the grape juice trade next time, but Last wouldn't let that happen. Hiraku thinks it's great that there will be a professional taking care of, and Lou thinks it's great that they'll have more value now. While traveling home, the merchant took a look at the village of Grand Arvour. When the girls arrived at Michael's office, he almost kicked them out because he didn't have time to deal with them. But his merchant intuition gave him a strange foreboding that he couldn't ignore. He knew that Florin was among the girls, that his head would roll if he wondered who the other girl was, and she introduced herself as Lakisman, the crazy dragon. Being the two as prominent and dangerous as they are, the risks exceed the benefits of trading with them, but he couldn't ignore them. They take the goods they brought and see the lizard men thinking they're about to have absurd negotiations. After discovering the fabric, he sees the rare fruits that have circulated and knows that each one can yield several silver coins. The profit he could get outweighs the risks, and he begins to discuss the maritime goods he can provide them. This is the chance of a lifetime, so he asks where they will deliver the villages in the forest of death, and last will give him a ride. He contemplates whether his life is worth the money, and on the way meets the three great dragons and the angels of annihilation with his army. At least the mayor seemed normal, he thought. But the vampire princess revealed herself, and when last shouted for wanting the grape juice, he lost all the confidence he had left. Although he has managed to survive and do the big business of his life, his old body can't take it anymore. At night, Hiraku prepares the new seafood collected and delivers them to all the girls. The next morning, another dragon appeared, and he wondered what he was doing there. He threw a fireball into the forest, signaling that he wanted to fight. He prepared the spear and missed the throw, but it was a trap to deceive the dragon and defeat him. Inside the forest, he meets another crazy and wonders why she was trying to burn the forest. Dreamy arrives flying and asks him to wait, trying to explain the situation. Her name is Harukan, and she is Dreamy's oldest sister. She tries to tell him that it's his fault for trying to marry last. Hiraku wonders what they mean, and Harukan says Dreamy wanted to marry her to the mayor, but Dreamy thinks it was only the grape juice that made him say those things. After discovering that his niece was getting married, wanted to come and find out how strong the mayor really was. After all, she thinks it unfair that a girl 900 years young first and wants Hiraku to solve her destiny. So Hiraku squeezes her head and tells her to kneel. Sorry, I meant to say that he makes her play with his trunk. I meant to say that he almost penetrated her body with his spear. I meant to say, do you want to know? Leave it there. Only one of the comments says I rip the slime. I can't stop crying. Fake fans will never expect while this. Eating the good dinner he created, Harukan wanted to play mahjong, but wanted to bet something in the game. Without physical goods to bet, Hiraku wondered if they would only play one set removal mahjong, and everyone was excited to play his game. After some removal of plot armor, Hiraku found herself in a very embarrassing situation. With his supreme knowledge, the legend thought the game would be easy, but he already had his last piece of clothing. The only explanation for this situation is they were cheating by rewriting the pieces, but he thinks he's just being a bad loser. Finally, his chance has come to defeat them, but he has taken the worst piece possible. It doesn't matter. He will not be paralyzed by the fear of dragons. Do anything to ensure that no one sees his persuasion. He informs the generals that the ancestral dragon has also gathered in the village of the Great Tree. The Lord Demon sighs and asks an important question. He asks what he should do about his daughter, who is in a bad mood all day. The general thinks he needs to mobilize the immediately, but Hanjin has already resigned. After attacking the village of the Great Tree, Hakuran became a teacher. She was very skilled at everything, but complained about each task. Due to her laziness, Hiraku forced her to dig holes. And after boring her to death, she decided that was the only thing she could do. The next day, 3 hot lamey girls begged Hiraku to save them. Their dungeon in the forest was invaded by Kuros, which made them run away from home. As they traveled so much to beg for their help, Florin asked Hiraku to try to help. In the end, they exchanged Lamy's jewels for theirs, promising to protect their homes in the future. Finally, Hiraku wanted to ask for one more thing. Being the beta simp he is, he asked them to use plot armor if one day they visited them. With his great strength, they began to carry goods in exchange for Hiraku's seeds. Sorry, I meant plantations, because they are born from seeds. In the demonic castle, 3 girls gathered under the daughter of the Lord and begged him to save Florin from the village of the Great Tree. At her office, Bezel teleported to meet her daughter and asked how she was. She tells him to go straight to the point because there is no time. He reveals that the princess is gathering to invade the village of the Great Tree. They began to doubt her reports, believing that no village could be so powerful. Not even the Lord Demon would dare for his daughter, and the day of the invasion will be tomorrow. They are gathering 300 troops, so he hoped she would find a way to scare them before they attacked the village. Florin thinks about who they could use to scare them, because if they used only Last and Hakuran, they would end up destroying the entire kingdom. But she thinks she has an idea. The next morning, a giant explosion destroys trees in the forest, and the soldiers beg the girls for mercy. They are surprised to receive 10 boxes of apples for almost doing enough. In the village, Florin introduces the 3 girls from them, saying they want to kill themselves from working. Soon they correct themselves. They came to work as if their lives depended on it. He wonders why they seem to have given up all the desire to live, but Florin reassures him, saying they are just emo. Their leader introduces herself as Yuri, and he does not need to treat her carefully and use her, as he's fed up with girls who want to be used as they please, so he lets Florin show them around. After he leaves, she tells the girls that she will forgive their transgressions if they work hard and keep their identities a secret. Yuri will no longer have special treatment, and she thinks she will be fine with this new life. After taking them around the village, the girls have dinner that they no longer have to worry about politics in this village. Hiraku is happy to see that they have acclimated so quickly, and Lu comes to see the new girls, but he notices that Lu's size has not changed. She noticed that her transformation magic didn't work all day, but she thinks she must be sick. After playing with the kids for weeks, Yuri had to leave the village before her father got worried. So she said goodbye to the other girls before leaving. Inside the castle, Lord Demonio confronts her. Her daughter has been different since she returned from the village. She has not been useless and hath been constantly busy since she returned. Basil tells him that she is probably interested in diplomacy and politics. Upon hearing these words, Lord Demonio realizes that she may have met and thinks he will destroy the entire nation until he finds it. Shortly after Yuri left, the preparations for the winter began. Hiraku was shocked to see the incredible harvest. Lars asked if he could bring extra food for the parents, and Haru also wanted to share with the parents. Her father is the Emperor Dragon who lives in the north. Her mother is the Hurricane Dragon who lives in the south. Hiraku found these names extremely intimidating, so he wanted to share food with them. First, Lars fed Dream on the way to Shishoto and left harvests for the trade. Apparently, a giant monster caused problems so Lars decided to take care of it. It was the kind of fruit of the sea that Hiraku was looking for. Meanwhile, Hakure went north and on the way back brought even more elves. Of course, they are all females. Why am I still surprised? They are mountain elves, but lately it is more difficult for them to find food. Hiraku wonders what to do, and the leader understands if he can't help, since they are strange, but the master of his says he only thought about where they would sleep tonight. He promises to never give up on them, and the elven leader thanks him that he will sleep in his bed if he wants, but Beta says it won't be necessary. This man collects women as if they were Pokemon in his Pokédex. That night, Hiraku decided to build a bathhouse so that girls wouldn't see his tricks. However, Florin flagged the 3 musketeers by the new bathhouse, and they said they wanted to wash his back. Florin said their plan was not big enough. However, she realized that it would make more sense since they were as flat as a washing board. Eventually, autumn began to fade and winter was approaching. One of these days, Hiraku saw that Lu was in bed, and he wondered why she wasn't well. She told him that it was nothing serious because it could only be time, and that a little nausea and fever wasn't a big deal. Senna wonders if Lu has wanted sour foods recently, and after hearing, Lu realizes that she really wants sour tomatoes. Senna told him that a person from the living village experienced something similar, so Hiraku asked her what ended up happening to them. She told him that they congratulated her on having a baby. After the end of winter, Hiraku began to wake up when the sun rose to stretch. This was his morning routine, and he avoided waking early because the maids insisted on getting up before him. Gosma went to another barrel of wine, and the women from the village were ready for another public performance. He found that people were not used to eating in the afternoon, but he didn't want them to work all day with just one meal, so he started serving them lunch. After finishing his meal, Hiraku wanted to start a new project, plant and all kinds of roses and flowers so that the village seemed more civilized. He began to make furniture and toys for children, even without experience in construction. Over time, he began to create swords so that the residents had a good heart. Wanted to continue practicing, and breathed so heavily that the sword turned into a war because of the shields there, very carnivorous. Hiraku's wooden sword is also strange, so he decides to go practice alone. He tries to throw some daggers, but the dark elf comes to show him how to do it. However, he knows that these little persuasions are not compared to his great spear. The black elf says she wants to feel his other spear penetrate her. Hiraku knows that he is only using this spear to compensate. After a long day of work, he took a bath alone and relaxed at night, but he always feels a presence hovering over him. All the girls spied on him as if it were an impossible mission, but the only thing he finds impossible is to lose his virginity. He shouts for help to reveal his hideouts, and although happy to have someone watching him, he will seal those hidden doors tomorrow. The next morning, Sina came to warn him of a strange man in the village. Near the big tree, he sees a curved man, and wonders how he managed to pass through all the angels and even to Zabuton. Lu sees the man and recognizes him as the progenitor. Inside his inn, he congratulates her on having a natural baby. It is one of the rarest occurrences for vampires in this world. Hiraku thinks it's all great, but he still doesn't understand why he was impaled before, so the progenitor claims he was attracted to the statues. He is one of the only beings to live more than 4,000 years. And remembers having met God shortly before he was born, but he can't remember his exact appearance. He continues to erase his memories to live a lot. Living next to such a masterpiece would make him real. Hiraku says he can't deal with a statue crushing his spirit. Instead, he offers himself to sculpt another, and the man is ready to be impaled again. Before leaving, he asked Hiraku the price of the statue, but Hiraku said God does not sell himself, so the progenitor promised to compensate him. In the great cathedral, the priest received him back after his departure, and the progenitor places the statue in the best part of the temple. As Hiraku refused the payment, he sent the most luxurious piano of his nation as a gift. The girls thought that learning to play the piano would impress the god Hiss, but after opening it, they realized that none of them could stand the pressure of breaking something so expensive. They begged for Hiraku to get an old piano so they could practice on it. After some negotiations with Michael, he got a new piano for the girls. Everyone in the village started practicing together. But Hiraku no longer had hope of sleeping at night. The big annual harvest had arrived, and after working all morning, Lu invited Hiraku to lunch. She noticed how hard he was working, so she gave him an ice cube to improve his drink and told him not to overload himself. He replied that he would be fine, but asked if she could walk around. She reassured him, saying that all the girls encourage him to exercise to have a strong body at the time of birth. Even after all this time, Hiraku doesn't believe he has a child in his belly. During dinner, the girls ask about the babies. Wait, and they all want to help Lu anyway. She says everything is fine, but she is bothered by not being able to drink PG grape Zabuton juice. Is ready for baby tea. In the mayor's office, the angel trio informs morale him that the village is low, and everyone is about to give in. To save them, they implore him to sell all his grape juices. Their only desire is to make Lu feel more comfortable, but although Hiraku finds this admirable, he thinks that selling all the juice would be a mistake, so he encourages them to continue because the taste will be better after aging a little more. The demons were excited about the better taste, but the dwarves weren't. They wondered why no one else wanted their smoothies, and Donovan promised not to add more white and creamy substance. Hiraku explains the situation, and Donovan is happy that cream was not the cause of stopping enjoying alcohol. Hiraku calms him down, saying that his juice is delicious, but wonders what this secret white cream would be. The dwarf tells him it's a secret, but if he really wanted to find out, they could play a game called Salted Biscuit. Hiraku thought it was better not to know. Weeks of peace continued to pass through the village, but Hiraku was only worried about his wife. It's almost time for her to go into labor, and he notices it was a gift from his aunt and the other angels of the rarest flowers that bloomed on an ice mountain. The leader of the Black Elves came to offer him a secret medicine from the Mountain Elves. It is the best medicine ever produced, and hopes that Lu can use it whenever he needs. Lust offers Lu a precious pendant from his father's treasure. The wolves offer part of the hunt, and the sons of Sabuton wanted to give him clothes and pudding. Lear offers him a crown of flowers, and even the lazy Harukan offers himself to peel apples. Flora comes in to give her brother a miso soup of tomato and is happy that she finally made miso after all this time. The leader of the lizards apologizes for knowing how to help since they are born from eggs, but offers his blood to help her son grow strong. After receiving all the gifts, Hiraku noticed a wooden hammer, and Lou told him that Donovan created it because it will soon be useful. After she finished talking, Lou felt a sensation in her belly and realized that it was time. All the maids began to run with towels to prepare the birth, and Hiraku felt helpless while waiting in the other room. Knowing that nothing could be done, he looked at the big tree and entered the small cave he made. The 2 moons shone intensely that night, reminding him of his first night there when he wanted to live far from everyone, in total isolation, but with everyone here, he was sure it was the life he wanted. Time flew by, and he had no recollection of what happened after that night. Lou and put his eyes on her son. She called him to hold him on his lap, so Hiraku carefully tried to hold him to his chest. When he held him and saw his smile, everything became real to him. He had become a real father. In his world of origin, he suffered from an illness. His only hope is that his son will never feel this pain. He tells his son to grow strong for him, but Lou takes his hand, saying that they will raise him to be strong. They decided to call their son Alfred, and was half vampire. He looked exactly like a normal human. This was the place where he started alone, and he was happy that everyone joined him and supported him all this time. Remembering all the gifts they brought him, he wanted to thank them for the kindness, so he gathered the leaders of the village. They wondered why they were there, so Hiraku showed them a reward medal that he created for them. This was his way of thanking everyone who came to build the village. That this is very similar to money, and Hiraku explains that his hope is one day to create a coin for the village. At the moment, all the food collected is given to him. He has to be responsible for distributing it to everyone. This would also solve the problem of prejudice of people with fruits, creating a value for them based on coins. Hiraku wanted to start by offering these values as a gift that could be exchanged for anything. To each village, Hiraku gave a medal and 30 coins to the families of Kuro and Sabuton. In addition, he created the coins by hand so that none were falsified. Everyone reacted differently. The dwarves wanted grape juice, furniture, and the angels exchanged them for the expensive weapons of Drain. Eventually, people started asking for furniture in exchange, but their value was still obscure. For the children, they decided to rent the mare for a day instead. Sometime after everything had calmed down, it was time for the big festival to celebrate the birth of their son. All the girls finally drank juice for the first time in months. Donovan and the other dwarves brought a large barrel, saying that it was the special juice they had created, combining all their white stuff from the salty biscuit games they played. Lou realized that the hammer was for that, so, with the 2 holding it, they opened the barrel. Hiraku never thought he would open a barrel to celebrate something so fun, so he told everyone to drink on behalf of the house today. Back, but his count wants to turn it into 50 shades of grey. All the girls like the juice, and Donovan asks if he likes this new secret recipe. Lou says he can't drink anything since he now has moms, and Donovan thinks his whole plan was ruined. He had planned to steal the mayor's wife, but he has an idea. He asks to bottle up right away to drink, but Hiraku thinks it would be great to bottle up for 20 years to enjoy when his son matures and Donovan dies. All this time, Hiraku had noticed the plan of this dwarf. He knew that Donovan's secret white would substance make anyone who drank it pregnant, but because he was so submissive, Hiraku wanted him to make the village elves pregnant with this drink to leave him alone. Donovan realizes that he is in trouble and runs to warn everyone to stop drinking. Is happy to finally have finished all this mess with the women. The demonic kingdom heard of the birth of Hiraku's son and wishes to congratulate them. Their village has grown too much, so they believe that the only plan from now on will be to marry Yuri with one of the villagers. Michael received the news of the birth and wants to send the best gifts to keep a long and beneficial relationship. Tyr discovered that there were many people still wandering the forest looking for a place to live, and the kingdom of Drime, along with the demonic kingdom, recently had many refugees in need of shelter after the recent war. In total, there are more than 100 realizes
people,
that the current village will not hold. So Lu suggests the perfect solution. They will create a second village for everyone, and Tyr thinks that the village of the Great Tree 2.0 will be even better. After all, this village saved them, so they want to do their to save others in the future, just as they were saved. Everyone lived happily ever after until Hiraku executed the poor and old Donovan. If you felt sorry for Donovan, fill this video with likes to show your condolences. Watch this next video. Until next time, my legendary plot masters.